Welcome back. Jordana Green here. Thanks so much for hanging out with me tonight. You know, my kid's got a couple of allergies. He's got a dairy thing going on. It's very confusing because sometimes I don't know that stuff has dairy in it. A lot of issues. We're getting all sorts of advice. Well, moms of peanut allergy kids are saying, you know, Jor, you should give him a little bit of dairy because with peanut allergies, we give him a little bit of peanuts under doctor's supervision, of course. I'm not recommending anything. Maybe that'll help. But then when I give him dairy, it's not a good scene. I'm very confused, and I started reading about probiotics to learn about those because I heard those are pretty good for kids with allergies, even things like eczema. Of course, I didn't know much about it, so I had to go to the experts. That's the beauty of this show. When you got lots of questions, you just get an expert to come on, and he teaches us all about it. Well, probiotic expert Dr. Gary Leyer joined me in studio the other day to explain probiotics.
Probiotics are commonly known as just those healthy bacteria. There's a definition that people follow, and probiotics aren't any bacteria. We're really talking about bacteria that provide a health benefit to the host. And I work with probiotics that provide health benefits to humans, but there's also probiotics that are used in the animal world too.
Where do probiotics come from? Where do we get them? How do we get them into our bodies?
Well, very different questions. Probiotics can arise from anywhere, and it kind of gets back to when babies are born, we don't have a microflora or a bacterial community that lives within us. But we certainly do now, right? So the key point about this is bacteria outnumber human cells 10 to 1 in the human body. So there's more of them than us, really. We're kind
so
of
we shouldn't be alive.
We're a walking reservoir of bacteria.
Okay.
But where do they come from if you're born without bacteria? So you get them from all over. You get them from contact with the mother, contact with the environment, contact with foods, and then based on the traits of the bacteria, they can take up residence in different parts of your body and perform all kinds of wonderful things.
Okay, so they're always beneficial?
Not always. Obviously, there's pathogenic bacteria, you know, the foodborne pathogens and things that'll take up residence. But the vast majority of bacteria that live in the human body or on the human body are beneficial or do no harm.
Okay, so then why do people take pills? Like I've seen these probiotic pills like acidophilus at the health food store. Why do we need those if we get this positive bacteria from food and the environment?
There's all kinds of things that happen in normal everyday life that can negatively impact the population of bacteria that live within us. This can be antibiotic therapy. It can be poor diet. It can be stress. It can be a lot of things. So you're not always walking around with an optimal state of intestinal bacteria. So one way to do that, and if you think about things eons ago, we don't eat very similar to what we did when our immune systems were developing. We ate much less sterile, dirty foods, right, when we were scavenging for food. Our immune system has kind of developed to expect to see that kind of daily contamination, if you will, of bacteria. And with our modern lifestyles and packaged foods and, unfortunately, the high sugar diets, it's really affecting the normal guys that live there, the normal bacteria that live there. So one way to get them is to supplement your diet. And you can do it through supplementation with dietary supplements, the pills and the powders. And there's a few functional foods or dairy foods, fermented dairy foods, that would also contain probiotics. But typically they're at levels that are much lower than what you'd find in a well-manufactured dietary supplement.
Like yogurt and cheese, things like that?
So yogurt and cheese contain bacteria, but they're not necessarily containing probiotics. So probiotics, the only difference being that probiotics have been tested, so clinically tested to provide a health benefit. Whereas in dietary supplements, they might have taken some bacteria isolated from fermented foods or isolated from a human or isolated from plants or wherever, and done human intervention clinical trials showing what they do and maybe how they do it as it relates to digestive health and immune health.
So do we need supplements?
In the world of probiotics, I believe that we do, for a couple of reasons. One is, we're not, unless you're living the most awesome lifestyle imaginable and eating the most healthy of diets, right? You're probably going to benefit from probiotic supplementation. The one thing about probiotics is it's not something that's taken to treat an existing condition necessarily. It's more prophylactic. It's more, I'm going to take it to maintain this healthy state or to get these bacteria in a healthy state to prevent any kind of illness down the road. And there's all kinds of clinical evidence that demonstrate that.
Okay, so we should all be taking a supplement then.
That's my personal feeling. I give them to my kids. I promote them, obviously. It's what I've done for 20 years in terms of researching the benefits of probiotic strains. Number one, they do no harm.
Okay.
And number two, there's all kinds of benefits that you can't really predict because when I started in the research community in probiotics, there was about 1 to 2 clinical studies published a year. Mm-hmm. Now there's 1 published a day around the world. So it's just grown exponentially, and the benefits of these good bacteria are going beyond the gastrointestinal tract where they've traditionally been studied.
Give me some examples of the benefits.
So some of the traditional benefits would be occasional constipation or kind of sluggish bowels, and keeping intestinal flow performing optimally. The other areas that you don't really feel like you would feel a digestive health benefit is in the areas of immune health. So when you talk about children and infants and atopic eczema or allergy kind of conditions, there's been some benefits ascribed to probiotics there. They've also been beneficial taken prophylactically in children and seniors and in athletes. When you're undergoing periods of stress, whether it's antibiotic therapy, whether it's athletic endurance, to reduce kind of the incidence and duration of colds and flus. So in other words, if you get sick, your immune system is in a better shape to shorten that duration of illness or essentially prevent the illness potentially.
And there are studies that back that up?
And there's studies that back that up. Not all strains are created equal. And the really exciting areas are areas that are outside of the more traditional space of digestive and immune health. There's probiotic bacteria that have been tested for heart health and how in the world would they impact heart health. And they can affect the LDL cholesterol levels through activity in the gut. There's probiotic bacteria that are studied for what's called the gut-brain axis. So the gut bacteria, the microbial community that lives within our gut, produce neuropeptides in these markers that get into the brain. And so there's work on ADHD and autism. Now, I'm not saying that these are magic foo-foo dust and they're going to cure ADHD or autism, but there's a lot of scientific studies going into understanding the role of healthy bacteria and benefits way outside the gut. And so, and type 2 diabetes, the list goes on. And there's some really good scientific rationale for why that's working.
Can they help allergies? You and I were talking earlier about food allergies in particular in kids. Peanut allergies are on the rise, lactose allergies. And I know a lot of kids who are allergic to dairy don't eat yogurt and don't eat cheese or milk where you would get the probiotics. Could they still take the supplement?
They could take the supplement, just, be a label reader. The supplements I'm familiar with are allergen-free. They're not made with any dairy or soy or gluten anywhere in the process. And then could these supplements, in your experience or the research, does it show that it can lessen other allergies in kids, i.e. peanuts or dairy? Right. So it's been a large area of study. There's studies that have looked at giving infants that are predisposed to developing eczema, which is an allergic kind of condition, probiotics and following them from 2, 4, 6 years out. So they took the probiotic for the first 2 years. Those kids developed less allergies, less eczema, I should say. But when you follow them after stopping taking the probiotic after 2 years and just monitor their health at 4 and 6 year time points, you'll see that those kids that had those 2 year supplementation of probiotics also were less prone to developing secondary allergic conditions like the allergies that you're mentioning. Really? If you've got a full-blown allergy, the data, I think, is more young and speculative on whether probiotics could be a treatment. I've seen recent studies where they're co-administering probiotics with oral immunotherapy to treat peanut allergies, and that was very successful in Australia. But that's the one study that's been done, and it's been in combination with where you give increasing doses of the peanut allergen over the course of a year, and then you develop tolerance. But probiotics have been tested, certain probiotics have been tested, for their ability to kind of calm down the immune system and regulate the immune system. Because in an allergic condition, it's out of whack. It's much like inflammation, but it's on a different spectrum. And so you kind of want that immune system to be in balance, and it seems like that's where probiotics have their most benefit. I'm speaking with Dr. Greg Leyer. He's a food scientist and a dad. I know you don't necessarily make probiotics, but honestly, I'm asking for advice. Is there anything that I should go to the store and look for, a brand, an amount, dosage, anything like that? Yeah, so yes and yes. If you're going to look for a probiotic on the shelf, there's a few kind of parameters that I tend to steer people towards, and that's there's a marketing numbers game going on where people think that more numbers are better, and they're delivering 100 billion probiotics or 200 billion.
That's a lot.
I think you've kind of reached a saturation point there, and it depends on your particular situation. If you're looking at just, I feel pretty good, but I've heard probiotics are good for me, I'm going to try them and see. We're looking at doses in maybe 15 to 25 billion. But look for products that declare a shelf life, too. There are some products out there that declare at time of manufacture, which doesn't tell you anything as to what's in that capsule when you take it. So you want to find products that are declaring an end of shelf life count. A great place for information is a website called up4probiotics.com, up4probiotics.com. Okay. It's its own brand, and you can peruse there. There's videos and training videos on why each different demographically focused probiotic product is manufactured that way. But that's a great source for information.
Okay, but would my doctor, just my regular pediatrician, be able to tell me what size and how much I should get for my kid?
I would say no. And so for children, typically the doses are a little bit lower than I would recommend for an adult. And there's products out there that are dedicated to kids, chewable tablets, but chewable tablets don't really taste that great, and the process of making a tablet actually kills a lot of the probiotic bacteria. A great product for kids is, there's a product called Kids Cubes. It's like a white piece of chocolate almost, but it's got 1 billion of a clinically documented probiotic strain, and kids love it, and kids of all age love it. I love it.
Kids Cubes.
It's hard to stop them. Kids Cubes, yeah, and you'll find that on that website.
Is there any downside to probiotics? Anything that we could be allergic to or a trigger in maybe an immunocompromised person or anyone who shouldn't take them?
If you are severely immunocompromised or if you're undergoing any kind of medical treatment, I would say consult with your physician. Obviously, that's the disclaimer. But the reality is that the safety record of probiotics is magnificent. They've been tested in everything from premature infants all the way up to people 100 years of age and older with no side effects. I mean, our body accepts these bacteria, it recognizes them as friends, not foes. And so there really isn't any kind of intolerance issues. I would say if you've never taken a probiotic before, don't jump in and go for 100 billion product. Just go for a 10 billion product or 15 billion product or something like that.
Are they regulated by the FDA?
The manufacturing of probiotics is definitely regulated by the FDA. As all dietary supplements are regulated by the FDA. You have to meet certain what's called GMPs, good manufacturing practices. They are regulated, and then the claims that are made, and I would caution your listeners about claims. If the claims sound too good to be true, they probably are. Claims are regulated by the FTC, and so if it's making a treatment of a disease kind of claim, that's an illegal claim, and so because they're not regulated as drugs, they're regulated as dietary supplements. So even though the clinical documentation might kind of say, hey, wow, this does prevent the cold and flu, we're not really able to say that on a product label.
Very cool. All right, Dr. Leyer, where can we find you? You can find me associated with uaslabs.com. Reach out to me there or go to that up4probiotics.com website. I've got a Twitter handle, which I have to profess that I'm not so on frequently. I'm not on it very frequently. Okay. But you can find me on there and reach out to our team, and we'll get questions answered. I really appreciate it. What an education I got today. I'm so glad you came in. Thank you again for joining us. My pleasure.